the other question I get is, well, there are 40 million books on Amazon, and how's mine going to be different and all that? And I go, yeah, you have a hidden asset nobody else has. Your stories of how you've helped people from mess to success. And scientists have proved that people make decisions not with the logical part of their brain. I call that the think it over part of the brain. They make it from that emotional part of the brain. And the shortcut is stories. That's where stories get processed. So when somebody sees your book, one of our authors landed a six-figure, $100,000 speaking contract. The prospect only got to page 2, the story on page 2, and said, hire him, bring him in and hire him. Because the story proves that you're not some philosopher or journalist or professor or wannabe. You're somebody who is in the arena, as Teddy Roosevelt used to say. You're in the arena and you take people from where they are right now to where they want to go. And that is what gets people to know, like, and trust you.
Welcome to Brick by Brick. Join me, Loren, as I share my personal journey of building a thriving real estate and hard money lending business from the ground up. Along the way, we'll explore the strategies, challenges, and breakthroughs that come with growing wealth. Whether you're a seasoned investor or aspiring entrepreneur, or simply curious about the world of private lending and real estate, this podcast is packed with actionable insights, real-world stories, and mindset tips to help you build your own path to success, brick by brick. Welcome to another episode of Brick by Brick. Today we have with us Henry DeVries. Henry is a book publisher and has been involved in that industry for a number of years, and we have never had a book publisher on our show before, so I'm excited to talk to Henry about all things in that realm. So Henry, thanks for joining us today.
Loren, it's so great to be here. I love the title Brick by Brick, because that is the truth of the situation, isn't it? That we build it brick by brick.
Yep. Every day, a little bit better every day, right? So,
yeah.
Well, Henry, so I read a ton of books. I probably read 40 plus books a year. And so what you do is inherently interesting to me. It's one of the things that maybe I would write a book someday, but I think a lot of people have had that thought. How do I write a book? Should I write a book? That kind of thing. You live in that space. How did you get into that space? And just tell us a little bit about what you do there.
I got into the space because I had my own business, formed a marketing agency, and I knew that I should find a niche. And everybody said, find a niche. In Canada, they would say, find a niche. So find a niche. The riches are in the niches. So I was helping consultants and agency owners and people in real estate with building their businesses. None of it felt like this really deep niche. And then one day somebody said, I want to write a book. I don't know how. You've written books. Could I hire you? And then they told somebody, and then somebody told somebody. And then I was doing my 9th book, and a voice in my head said, I think the niche just found you. So, and I continued that. And then 12 years ago, formed Indie Books International. And since that time, I have ghostwritten, co-authored, edited, published more than 200 business books. And
wow.
Our motto here is that the book is the starting line, not the finish line.
Wow. 200 books is a lot. So I think, most of us have heard and kind of have a general concept of ghostwriting. Can you maybe put a better definition in our heads of what that is and what that process might look like?
Loren, I wish you could have been there the day I got this phone call and stranger on the line and said, is this Henry DeVries, the ghostwriter? And I said, well, yes. And he goes, well, my story takes place in a mansion on Halloween. A thunderstorm is going on, and they're holding a seance in the parlor to contact the spirit of the departed owner. And I said, I got to stop you right there. I'm not that kind of ghostwriter. In publishing, a ghostwriter means somebody who helps an author write a book, and they're invisible. That's what you call them, a ghost. They're invisible. They get thanked in the acknowledgments as the editor. But they're the tool that helps the book get written. I hope I don't get too detailed here, but there are other things like co-author. On my Warren Buffett book, I'm the co-author of that book. Sometimes you're a with author. So this is usually like a famous CEO, and it says with, and it's the name of a writer. So those are the different things. So ghost, totally invisible. Those two things, you're visible to the public.
So in ghostwriting, let's say I was going to write a book and I was going to use a ghostwriter. I'm communicating my story to you through some medium, and then you are putting those words into a text format that's palatable to the reader.
Sure. But through the medium, we're not talking a seance again, not this one. We're talking, I'm going to interview you. So I've been a journalist. In addition to a business owner, I've been a journalist my whole career. I've always had some sort of journalism side hustle going on. Like for 7 years, I was paid to write a weekly column for Forbes Online. So I will interview, transcribe, and my job is to make sure someone who reads the book feels like they're talking to Loren. Or if Loren showed up, they'd say, yeah, that was the person from the book. Bad ghostwriting is when the ghostwriter wants to put themselves into the book. And so it might be interesting, but it's not the person. So it doesn't serve them doing it that way. Quick story. I had a CEO of a real estate development company as a client, and I was his ghostwriter. And he said, Henry, I don't feel this is right. And I said, Buck, what's not right? And he says, well, I get the credit and my picture in this article there, but you did the work. I said, well, Buck, let me ask you a question. How many homes are you going to build this year? And he said, 1,000. I said, wow, your arms are going to get really tired doing all that hammering and painting. And he said, well, don't be silly. You know, I'm going to, cause 1,000 homes to be built. I said, just like you're causing this writing to be built and you're using tools to get it done. So just think of me as your writing tool. My job is to interview you, capture your voice, organize your thoughts. I think it's malpractice if you sat down and spent your time, pounding this out. We call that the misery approach, by the way, like where you lock yourself in a cabin. We name it after the Stephen King movie and novel, typing 25 words a minute trying to get a book done. No, that's a ghostwriter is a tool that you use to get a book done faster and better.
Got it. And so so I know you've got 200 business books or professional books. What kind of people are having ghostwriting done, and what are their reasons for having these books written?
Sure. The people who are my clients are, in general, I would call them in the business of selling expertise. People come to them for their expert advice, opinions, knowledge, and the book is designed to give them more impact, more influence, even a path and a plan for more income, to position them as an authority. People are attracted to authorities in any field. So, law, real estate, finance, banking, you want to deal with the authority, not just the average person. Well, in our world, if somebody took the time, effort to get a book out there and their philosophy is in writing, that builds trust. By the way, if you don't want to build trust, just tell people, trust me. That's the worst thing you can do to build trust.
Yeah. I've heard that before. And honestly, I've felt that before, right? Like somebody that I've met and I find out they have a book. I might not even have ever read that book. And I'll be like, oh, I met so-and-so. They wrote so-and-so book, right? And there's like a level of credibility, even if you've never read the book, just because they took the time to write.
We say more people will be impacted hearing about the book than actually reading the book. So when people are on podcasts talking about books, and I don't mean just their book, a lot of times on podcasts, people will say, well, Henry, what's your favorite book other than your own? So then I'll share some recommendations. Also, people speaking on stage, they got booked because they're the author of this book. And that's why they got booked to be on the stage. I wrote about people at Forbes, when I wrote about people, when somebody was the author of a book, I never had to explain to my editor, why did you write about this person or what made this person worthy to be in Forbes? Just by saying, oh, they're the author of this book. The media gives you a pass if you're the author of a book. A lot of meeting planners give you a pass if you've written a book. So it opens doors.
Yeah, it makes a ton of sense. So what is your favorite book since you brought it up?
I have several. A recent favorite is by a rabbi, and it's Rabbi Daniel Lapin. It's Business Secrets from the Bible. So he organized 40 different teachings from the Bible and went deep on them. And for instance, and we all have different faiths, but in this one, he says, if you're Judeo-Christian, you don't have to ask what your purpose is in life. it's spelled out very clear what your purpose is. You're to help God's other children with the gifts that you've been given. What does any parent want? They want you to help their children. The father wants you to help the children. So anyway, I found this book to be very useful and very helpful. I'm in that 5 a.m. club. That's a great book too, the 5 a.m. club, where you get up early and you exercise in the morning and you journal and you meditate and you read something. You read a book. So I'm constantly reading a book. Somebody asked me, "Oh, don't you get tired of reading? Do you not read books?" And I said, "Well, my hobby is writing screenplays, but I'm reading books all the time."
Yeah, I'm right there with you. Like I said, I'm reading 40 to 45 books a year, which is nothing compared to what my wife reads. But I think it's one of the best ways to open your mind up to new ideas. And I also think that, reading the same book 2 different times, that you'll have different experiences with that same book because you're in a different spot each time that you read it.
I had a very successful author and client, and he was a high performance coach for CEOs. So he's working like with American Airlines and Timex and these kind of people. And one of his things that he taught me is, he says, I want you to read 1 page a day from 2 different books. And those 2 different books are Think and Grow Rich and How to Win Friends and Influence People. Just read a page a day. And I did that for years. And here's what happens. Things will come up and it's like you've got either Dale Carnegie or Napoleon Hill, like on your shoulder, like those little things, and say, why don't you do this? I had something come up and it was a parent, and they brought their child, and their child asked me, and the little thing in my head said, what would an extraordinary person do? So I got down on one knee to talk to the child eye to eye. The parent said, where did you learn to do that? I said, just kind of came in my head. But you like you're reading those 40 to 50 books, that's filling your head with ideas. You're not the same person you were a year ago or 2 years ago because of who you associated with. You associated with these 40 to 50 authors. Bravo.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, I could argue that no one's the same person that they were a year ago. Some of us just choose to put positive influences into our lives to improve. And other people choose to either stay stagnant or put negative influences.
Yeah. You've heard that thing that you're the sum of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And you got to be real careful. None of them are negative, that they're not scarcity mentality people. So, yeah. Another great book I've read as far as health and all that is The Blue Zones. It's written about 10 years ago by somebody from National Geographic, and they'd studied these 5 areas around the country where people lived longer, healthier, better lives. And then they found these 9 characteristics they all had. And one I call the tribe of 5. It's that same sort of concept that all these people had this group of positive people they hang out with. It's just part of who they are.
I've heard of that book. Not one I've read yet, but certainly I've heard of that. No,
I called up my friend Jim this year and I said, Jim, I've got some bad news. And he goes, what is it? I said, I'm following this advice where I've picked 5 people that I'm going to spend more time with this year. And that means I'm going to invite them to golf and to go to ball games and to go have lunch. And you're on the list, so you're going to get invited to a lot of things. He says, oh, this doesn't sound like bad news. This sounds like good news. So going to see Jim this week. It's great I really encourage people to look into that book.
I thought you were going to say that you were going to tell Jim he was number 6 on the list and that he got the axe.
He's like, you're on the bubble. Jim, you're on the bubble.
Yeah, you better step up your game.
But what was it? In high school, I was on the tennis team, and for my junior year, they took 8 people, and like 7, 8, and 9, we were battling each week to see which 2 of us would make the travel team. And some weeks I made it, and some weeks I didn't. So I understand the bubble.
Yeah, such is life. So I want to take a step back because we got jumped right into you writing all these books, and you were finding your niche and stuff. What were you doing before that basically set you up to be the ghostwriter that you are and to build this company that you have?
Okay. So I knew what I wanted to do since junior high. I knew I wanted to have a career where I was writing and speaking. So I studied everything I could about writing and speaking through high school, through college, and would always have this side hustle interest in journalism, so writing, and then got into public relations. And early on in public relations, and I was in my 20s, and decided that a great thing to do would be to ghostwrite articles for our CEO clients. So I had a lot to learn along the way, and I had some mentors and who coached me. But through years, I would be ghostwriting for CEOs. So I was invisible, but I was writing their articles and letters. And then one company said, "How about books?" So I started writing books for them, and then all that grew until I started my own business, and that was just the natural thing to do. Was to ghostwrite articles for people. But what I learned along the way is it couldn't be a great Henry article. It had to be a great article for the person. Short story, a man named Paul was a CEO. I ghost wrote a book for him. And Paul is a driver, type A, kind of direct person who runs a company. We know the type. He's the kind of person you wouldn't start the conversation with, "How was your weekend?" You would get like right down to business. And if there was any time, "How was your weekend? How's your wife?" Great. Move on.
Mm-hmm.
So Paul calls me after the book's done. Says, "I want to talk to you about this book we wrote." I said, "Okay." He goes, "I really hired you to write this book to make me sound better. And all along the way, you kept pushing me and giving me feedback and pushback. And you made sure it was the best Paul book that I could do. And I just wanted to say you made the right decision." I said, "Okay, thanks, Paul, by your tone. I didn't know where we were going with that one." But that's the key. It has to be you. It has to be authentically you. It's not, I did have a client and I'll do it, but they said, "Yeah, we don't want to give you any input. Just we agree on the title of the book. You give us a book." And they had the books published anonymously, and it was from the marketing experts and it was an XYZ. It's a Fortune 500, New York Stock Exchange company. But I was the experts, just this freelance writer who they'd hired to do it. But they just saw that these were marketing materials. And they did a study that I've replicated since that they got a 4x to 20x ROI on the books I wrote for them. Meaning they brought in that much revenue, people that they would send it away for the book, or they'd be at a trade show and they'd want the book and they would follow up and get that kind of business from it. And this CEO at that company called a meeting to look into this. And the salespeople said, "Well, we get a lot of the credit because, we landed the sales." And the marketing people said, "Well, we get a lot of credit because we published and marketed the books." And the person who hired me said, "Well, Henry gets a lot of credit for writing these books." And the CEO says, "I don't care who gets the credit. I just want more of this funny 4x to 20x ROI. Keep doing that, whatever you're doing."
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, I feel like it'd be hard to track that. So much of marketing is like this layered approach of you have to build the brand and you've got to build the credibility and you have to build, the list, and all these things work together in tandem. And maybe one of those things is where the channel where the actual lead comes from. But it's hard to say my website is what's getting all this traction, right? When really they saw you on social media.
Integrated marketing communications. Yeah, integrated. Yeah. And I like to say that success has many parents. Failure is an orphan. So nobody stands up at those meetings and says, "Well, we're all to blame for this failed campaign." We all share some of the blame on this. I've never heard anybody say that, but I have people stand up, like you said. "I think our website gets a lot of credit for this."
Yeah. It's just so hard to parse out which piece is the most powerful, right? Because if you take any one piece of that puzzle apart, maybe they heard about your business on a social media post, and then they went to your website, and then someone sent them an email, and who gets the credit? I guess it's whoever they went through the last channel, right? But
one of my mentors said, "The magic is in the mix. The magic is in the mix." And it's, it's like, and now we used to say, "Well, it takes 7 touches for somebody to," and now we're 9. And I've heard 27 touches probably because of AI and AI slop putting so much stuff out there. But we know the magic is in the mix when they hear it from different sources in different ways. So that's why books are so important, because books can get you publicity. Books can get you speaking bookings. Books can get you on podcasts. Books can get you interviewed. So all of these things contribute, and they hear about it, and it puts it in the mix.
So the people that come to you and say, "Hey, I want you to ghostwrite a book for me," do they generally have a pretty fleshed out, I mean, obviously besides the company that just gave you a title, but do they have a pretty fleshed out idea about what they want you to write about? Or do they just say, "I want to write a book. I don't know what I want to write about. I've had an interesting life or whatever. How does that conversation usually go? And what do you say to people that say, "Oh, I would love to write a book. I just am not that interesting."
Half have an idea for a book, and the other half either don't have an idea or they have too many ideas and they don't know where they should go. So, Loren, if I can give away $365 right now, I'm going to give it away. I do courses online, 2-hour courses, and it's the 7 questions you must answer before you write a book or before you promote a book. And I help people get clarity around that. I charge $365, but anybody who mentions Brick by Brick or Loren, I will comp into that. It's on my website, indiebooksinternational.com events. It's 2 hours. Again, there's no code or anything. You have to email me to ask for it. And we don't put you on a list. I don't have a funnel. If people want to talk to me, I talk to them, or if they want to be in the class or this, but then that's how we bring it out. And I help them see who the book needs to be for and what problem it's going to be solved by their book and why that matters to the target niche that they're going after. Mm-hmm. Those are the stars to guide your book writing by.
Is that how it goes? Is you focus on where we want to end up and then work backwards? Or do you start someplace and then work forward and then try to create an ending that works for the audience there?
I call myself a book architect. And if by ending, if you mean blueprints for a book before we start writing, then yes, that's what I do. Because I don't believe in the seat of the pants approach where we just, let our muses come and filter and channel them. And no, books have a plan. There's a specific idea behind them and what they're trying to accomplish. And that's what my 200 books have in common, is that they're for a certain group of people solving a certain problem. And there's a reason why they need to do this. And then the how follows that. And most people know the how. What they have a hard time is even thinking through these questions. Yeah. When I say, who's your book for? I say, I live in a world of multiple right answers, but I'll give you one wrong answer. Everybody. Your book is not for everybody. It's not for 8 billion people on the planet Earth. No, there's a certain group of people. I want you to be interesting to less people, but I want you to be more intensely interesting to those people.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense and follows with a lot of other things in life, right? You gotta pick your niche. The riches are in the niches, or niches if you're in Canada.
Riches are in the niches, biches. Yeah, in Canada.
Right. Well, I think that's interesting because I think it flies in the face of what most people think of as writing a book. We've been fed this cinematic view of authors where they sit down with their typewriter in their dark, single bedroom loft in Manhattan with a blank sheet of paper and they just start pounding out a book. And
it was the best of times. It was the worst of times.
Exactly.
Call me Ishmael. Yeah, I know.
It sounds like it's more structured and like, okay, where do we want to get to? And there's a strong workflow associated with probably most of the people that are writing your type of books are very familiar with from the business world.
Yeah, well, but I introduce them to there are 3 main types of business books. One is a process book. It's usually 10 chapters, and it has 6 chapters of this proprietary process that you've developed, a problem-solving process. And then it has lots of stories that illustrate about that process. As you said, going from where you are to where you want to go, or from mess to success, from problem to solution. And you tell these stories. Or there's the 20 essay book where it's about a topic and you've written 20 aha essays that get people to think about things in a different way. Maybe you're a contrarian thinker. Maybe you have new insights on it. One of my favorite chapters one of our people came up with is AI is like your drunk uncle. So everybody's praising AI. He's going no, AI is like a drunk uncle. Sometimes says really good things, but sometimes it's hallucinates and is off the charts. You need to bring him back in. So that's the 20 essay book. And then the other one is the fable. Or the novella or the tale, where it's a fiction, but it's the 1-minute manager or who moved my cheese, some little story that teaches a lesson and some main principles, The Go Giver by Bob Berg. So any of those, Richest Man in Babylon, these are all examples of this style. We've written several of those.
Yeah. Built to Sell would be another one I like that's in that format. So.
Greatest Salesman in the World by Og Mandino. Yeah. These are classics.
Got it. And of those 3, which one tends to get written the most? My guess would be a process book.
And the process book But about 10 years ago, the essay format came on and went large. So I wrote a book during the pandemic called Rainmaker Confidential. I interviewed 100 people who were rainmakers for big consulting firms and big ad agencies and other things. And, what were they doing to make it rain during the pandemic? That turned into 21 essays. And I say there are 8 types of books. That was a mystery book because it was a mystery to people. How do I get clients when I can't go schmooze at the networking luncheon anymore? What do I do? Well, the principles didn't change, just how you did it. And
Right.
but what people need, I find, are stories. Human brains are hardwired for stories, and you can give me a principle. That's like a lecture. I'll forget that in 30 days. But if you give me a story with a lesson, and when I teach workshops on this, I'll say, okay, tell me a story about a race between a rabbit and a turtle, the tortoise and the hare. And everybody can tell me that story. I said, what's the moral of the story? Slow and steady wins the race. Okay. That story is 3,000 years old and you remember it.
Mm-hmm.
But if I gave you a lecture on persistence, you'd forget what I'd say in 30 days. So that's the power of story, and we need to incorporate that into books.
Yeah, I think that's a great point because I know some of the most engaging books that I read, there's usually some data points or some information up front about what they want to tell, and then they bring a story in to reinforce that. And those tend to stick with me a lot better than something that's just straight data drivel.
Yeah, data dribble. I like it. I'm going to put that right up there with AI slop.
There you go. It's all yours.
Oh, another one, not to gross people out, but the other one is like you said about where people just like start writing and all that. We call that word vomit. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, word vomit's a different thing in sales when you're a salesperson super nervous and they just get up there and they just spill everything that they've been trained and what to say all at once. And the
I too am Sandler system
there.
trained. What was it? Feel, felt, and found. That was Dale Carnegie. Feel, felt, and found. Many people feel the same way. They felt, now they've found that. Yeah.
So and of those 3, so process books obviously are the most common, right? And then we're getting more 20
most common
essay books.
That would be the essay, and then rare. It's a rare bird to do the fable.
And what do those sell the best, or what do those have the most exit for people buying them?
Yeah. So I believe the process books sell the best, and it's because people aren't reading business books to be enlightened. They buy business books. And by the way, they don't buy one on a topic. When I was hired by McGraw-Hill to write the Warren Buffett book, I bought 11 Warren Buffett books in one day. That's why on Amazon, where it says people who bought this book also bought these books, because Amazon, not just to upsell you, but Amazon knows that that's how people consume the books in business, that they want to get all these topics. I had this attorney once who was struggling with his firm. He wasn't making the money he should be making, and he was struggling. And he was a friend from college. We'd gone to college together, and now he went into law. And he came to my office and wanted to hire me. And I said, look, let me just do this. And I went to my bookshelf, 300 books there. I picked out 8 books, and I said, read these 8 books, apply the lessons in these 8 books, and you'll double your revenues. And he says, yeah, I don't want to read 8 books. I want to hire the guy who knew which 8 books to pull off that shelf to give to me and to apply it to mine. So that's what I've also found, where people would say, Loren, because people say, well, wait a minute, I don't want to give away my secret sauce. I don't want to give away my best ideas. I said, really? Because I have found the more people you help with your best ideas in general, the more will hire you for your specifics. They want to know how to apply it to their situation and not make a mistake. So that's why I wrote the book Marketing with a Book. I didn't write the book Marketing a Book. Matter of fact, many of my clients, including one who's made an extra $1 million because of this, I don't think he's sold 200 books. He says, I don't care about selling books. I strategically give books away to people who can hire me for 5- and 6-figure engagements. And that's what matters. So that's marketing with a book. And the books got him the speaking engagements to be in front of the CEOs who could hire.
It makes a lot of sense. It's a bit counter to what we generally think of as like, oh, I'm an author. I want to be a New York Times bestseller and get my book out there. But, based on what you're saying, most of your authors don't care so much about being a New York Times bestseller. They want to sell enough books to make themselves more known, to create awareness, and to create some confidence in their brand.
Absolutely. It's all part of being an authority. And I also say an authority is not one and done. I also say you can't spell author. I'm sorry, you can't spell authority without the word author. And authority has multiple books because they're not one and done. One book can't say everything an authority has to say. And authorities are magnets for clients. They don't chase, they attract. People come in and they want to know, how would this work? And where does this work like? And what's your opinion on this? And so you do that by typing and talking. The book is required. Sure. It's the ticket to play speaking. And it's why my business also trains the authors how to go on the lecture circuit, how to get booked as a speaker, how to give a TEDx talk, how to do videos, how to do your own TV show, all these things. We train them to look, sound, walk, talk like an authority because that's what pulls people in.
Sure. Yeah. Makes a ton of sense. Yeah. So as you look at what your company, the future of your company looks like, do you think you got another 200 books in you? Or, kind of what's the future look like? What are you trying to accomplish right now?
Well, I'm the chief relationship officer. Now I have an editor-in-chief and I have an associate publisher and we're training the ranks. So, we got more than 200 books in me. I won't be around for all of them because as my financial advisor said, what's going to happen when you graduate? And I said, graduate? And he says, yeah, you're going to a better place than you are right now, aren't you? I said, oh, the big graduation. Yes. One day we're all going to graduate. So I've been setting up systems and processes to help people and training. And, it's like a sports team. We've got the first string, but we also got a second string and we've got some people in the minors we're developing. So it's going to keep going.
So if somebody is listening to this and they think, I have a rough idea for a book, I would love to talk to Henry, how do they reach out? And then also what's that process look like? How long does it take? What can they expect?
Sure. So they can go to the website, indiebooksinternational.com, and on there you can request a book chat with me, which is a strategy call. It's not a selling call, but it's a strategy call. A lot of times the first step is they'll go to one of these book kickoff classes and really get clarity around the type of book. Then there are different levels of help that we offer, from a full ghostwritten book to helping, or I do retreats in Chicago where my editor-in-chief and I will interview you for 2 days. And at the end of the 2 days, we'll transcribe them, organize it, and give you the skeletal framework, maybe 20 to 30,000 words of a book that you can polish and have it be a publishable manuscript. Or if you wanted us to do it, we'd do that for you. That should take 90 days. Some people stretch it out longer. It's harder if you stretch it out. Then the next thing, publishing can take, 4 to 6 months, depending on bells and whistles. If you're also getting an Audible book and a hardback edition and the books in color and these things. So that amount of time. So at the outside, a year from the day you decide to start, you'll have a book in hand that is available on Amazon.com and BarnesandNoble.com, and people can order it through bookstores, and a book that's on Audible and iTunes and other platforms. So all that can happen in that amount of time. And then your real job starts, because we say publishing the book is the starting line, not the finish line. It's the marathon that starts. And then you need to love your book, and you need to get other people to love your book. And you love your book by mailing it out to people, maybe about 20 a month, to podcasters and meeting planners and potential clients. And then you do at least 2 showcase speeches, either a podcast or a speech a month, to a target-rich audience about your book. And that, again, the rabbit and the tortoise and the hare, slow and steady wins the race, because you're building doing that. Now, I also advise that you have your own TV show. I also advise you have a newsletter on LinkedIn. There's a lot of things that an author does that are virtually no cost to get these things done, to build up a platform. That's what we say in publishing, a platform. So I have 20,000 people on my LinkedIn platform, and I have 2,500 people who subscribe to my newsletter and another 1,600 who are on my opt-in email list. So, you build that over time. And by the way, it makes it a lot easier when your second book comes out that you've already got these people to talk to about your book.
Yeah, it makes sense. So a year's worth of time, what does that look like from an actual time commitment monthly? And then
Yeah,
what
I
does that look
say,
like from a financial commitment approximately?
sure. So financial commitment can be anywhere from, let's say, 10 to 40,000, depending on how much marketing you want and other things like that. And then let's see, the time, usually for an author, I say figure half a day a week for 90 days, for 12 weeks to get the book written. Then it's a lot less, maybe it's an hour a week weighing in on, yeah, I like that cover. Oh, I'd like to see something different. Feedback on this or that in the publishing process. And then, like anything else, it's on marketing. It's how much you're willing to invest in it. But I say the minimum monthly requirement is mailing out 20 copies of a book, which somebody should do for you, and being on a couple of podcasts or speeches, which are a few hours a month. I do 4 podcasts a month. I mean, a guest, and then I host 8 TV shows a month.
Wow. Got it. Okay. Well, so, I mean, honestly, that's not as much of a time commitment as one might think. You hear about authors spending, I spent 4 years on this book. It's the culmination of 4 years worth of work or something like that. And some of that's
it was
probably
4 years, but it was like 3 days of work.
Okay.
That's why I do these retreats in Chicago, because people are amazed what we can get done in 2 days of focused activity. And I've got one coming up July 31st and August 1st, and they get in at 9 a.m. I say, don't book any plans. I'm going to bring in all your meals and you'll have homework to do at night, and then you leave 4 o'clock the next day. But you're going to have 25,000 words, words, which is, a first great step.
Why Chicago?
Because everybody has a direct flight to Chicago. I mean, I love San Diego, but if you're in Raleigh, you got to take a plane or two to get here. But there's a direct flight from Raleigh to Chicago every day, and we're out by O'Hare. So
I always forget about Chicago and direct flights because long time ago, former job, I avoided O'Hare like the plague because every time I went to O'Hare, I got delayed. So switched to a different airline that routed me through either Detroit or Minnesota. So
okay, I get it. You went Delta. So
yeah,
but I don't do them during the winter.
Huh?
I'm planning to do one in Phoenix in February.
Okay.
Because, hey, a lot of people would like to get down to Arizona that time of year. But in the summer, Chicago just seems to be a good direct thing. When I put on meetings for people, meeting planners told me about, Chicago's probably the most popular location to have a meeting for all those reasons. Plus, there's from April to end of September, either the Cubs or the White Sox are at home playing. There's always a baseball game in Chicago.
Now there's a first good reason I've heard to go to Chicago in a long time. So
I have visited 44 Major League Baseball parks. I've got 3 to go before I touch them all.
Oh.
I try to get to Wrigley, Fenway, and Dodger Stadium once a year. And those happen to be the 3 oldest parks too. Not a coincidence.
My son's a big Dodgers fan, so he would love that. But I've been to about 6. So, and we're a big baseball family. So, anywho, well, Henry, it's been a real joy talking to you. Before we go, is there anything you want to leave the audience with, or any parting messages you have?
Sure. Your story matters. The other question I get is, well, there are 40 million books on Amazon, and how's mine going to be different and all that? And I go, yeah, you have a hidden asset nobody else has. Your stories of how you've helped people from mess to success. And scientists have proved that people make decisions not with the logical part of their brain. I call that the think it over part of the brain. They make it from that emotional part of the brain. And the shortcut is stories. That's where stories get processed. So when somebody sees your book, one of our authors landed a 6-figure $100,000 speaking contract. The prospect only got to page 2, the story on page 2, and said, hire him. Bring them in and hire them. Because the story proves that you're not some philosopher or journalist or professor or wannabe. You're somebody who is in the arena, as Teddy Roosevelt used to say. You're in the arena and you take people from where they are right now to where they want to go. And that is what gets people to know, like, and trust you.
It's interesting. Yeah, I mean, my hold up on never writing a book is I'm like, well, I'll just wait 10 more years. I'll have a lot more stuff to talk about, right? I'm not where I want to be yet, so why should I write one?
Oh, do we have time for that? Do we have time for that story?
Let's go. Let's hear it.
Okay, here we go. So I've started my business and I bring in a business coach, Gary Hawk, and Gary had been a corporate counsel for a Fortune 500 company, and he wanted to take me to lunch to hear about my exit strategy. I thought, oh, wow, because I have an MBA. So finally I can talk MBA to somebody. And I said, well, what I'm going to do, Gary, is I'm going to grow this marketing communications agency. I'm going to grow it and have it running like a top. And then I'm going to find a strategic buyer and I'm going to sell it to them for $1 million. And then I'm going to go out and teach experts, agency owners and consultants how to attract right fit clients, because it's hard, it's difficult, it's scary, but I've cracked the code. I know how to do it. He says, what's your time frame? And I said, well, it's going to take 10 years to grow all this and do that and then launch this new business. And he said, well, you sound very passionate. I said, I am. He said, well, let me ask you, why are you waiting 10 years to follow your passion? That was like a gut check question. And I did what my clients do, and I ask them a hard question. I lied. I didn't know it was a lie at the time, but I said, well, Gary, it's because I have these contracts and these employees and I have this mortgage and I have the lease and there's a wolf at the door. Every day I have to get past the wolf at the door to get in and do the work. And well, he knew it was my fear talking. And he said, well, how would you get started? What would you do? How would you do this? And I said, oh, well, I would write books. I'd put on seminars. I would align with some university, someplace with lots of trees and water. It's probably in Oregon. And he goes, wow, really specific. How would you get started in a small way? I said, well, I'd put on a lunch and learn. And I spent the last $2,000 I had in my checking account on invitations, postage, turkey sandwiches. And my invitations were in the mail the week of 9/11/2001. When the jets hit the towers, my invites were at the post office. 5 of the top 10 marketing firms in San Diego went bankrupt that year. One that survived told me they didn't write an invoice for 90 days. We almost went bankrupt. But a funny thing happened. People filled my conference room and they wanted to hear what I had to say. The extent of my intellectual property was one sheet of paper with 29 bullet points on it. Point number 15 was write a book. I poured my heart out. People started hiring me to coach them on that, to write books, to do these things that transformed the business. I found a home for the employees. I found a home for the clients and just fully went all in on this. And then a university, my alma mater where I taught, called me up and made me a dean and let me do that 4 days a week. So on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, I could run my ghostwriting business. And then after 7 years of that, I said, I love the university. I love what we're doing here. I just love these authors more, and I need to give them more to get them successfully published. So that was 12 years ago and 200 books ago, and best decision I ever made.
Love it. Love it. People always respond to passion. So, Henry.
Enthusiasm. Yeah.
Enthusiasm and passion. So, Henry, thank you for your time today. I will make sure all of your links are in the show notes. So if anybody wants to reach out to you about writing their own book because they have a story that's worth telling, I will encourage them to do so. And for everybody else, thank you for your time. Thanks for listening to Brick by Brick. As always, if you know somebody that could get some benefit out of this episode or any others, please share the podcast and have a great week. We'll talk to you next time. Thanks for tuning in to Brick by Brick Wealth Building Conversations. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe and leave a review. It helps more people find the show. For more tips, resources, and updates on my journey, follow me on Invest with Loren. Let's keep building wealth, one brick at a time. See you next week.